You've heard the name, right? Babylon. It's one of those names that just echoes through history, full of power, mystery, and, let's be honest, a lot of legend. For thousands of years, it was the symbol of incredible wealth, but also of, divine punishment. So what's the real story behind it all? Well, let's find out. Is not this the great Babylon I have built for the glory of my majesty? I mean, talk about confidence. Those are the words of its most famous king, Nebuchadnezzar II. And that quote, it just perfectly captures the immense pride, the ambition that really defined Babylon, a city that saw itself as the absolute center of the world. For centuries, that's pretty much all Babylon was, a legend. You know, a story preserved in ancient texts, a kind of cautionary tale about pride. And this led to a huge question that drove explorers crazy for ages. Behind all the myths, was there a real, physical city buried somewhere under the sands of a rock?
Yeah, before it was a dot on a map, Babylon was an idea. It was shaped by these incredibly powerful sacred texts. The Quran mentions it as a place of magic, where a couple of angels taught forbidden arts. In the Bible, it's the capital of a massive empire and the ultimate symbol of human arrogance. For hundreds and hundreds of years, these stories were the only Babylon the world really knew.
But that all started to change right around the turn of the 20th century. You had this new generation of archaeologists who were just fed up with knowing Babylon only through ancient books. They were determined to find actual physical proof of the city. They wanted to touch the very bricks that Nebuchadnezzar himself had walked past. So the key player here is a German archaeologist named Robert Koldewey. In 1897, he finds this critical clue, little pieces of brilliant blue-glazed bricks, totally unlike anything else in the area. That was the spark. By 1899, he'd secured funding and his team started digging. And then, in 1902, they hit something that would change archaeology forever, the incredible Ishtar Gate. Can you even imagine that moment? After digging through centuries of just dirt and sand, this unforgettable vision starts to emerge. A massive gate covered in a sea of deep, dark blue bricks and decorated with hundreds of animals molded right into them. The legend, it was real. And these weren't just random decorations, you know. They were sending a message of power and faith. You had lions, the symbols of royalty, guarding the main avenue. There were bulls, which represented the mighty storm god, Adad. And then you had these dragons, this incredible composite beast called the Mu-Shu-Shu-Shu, which was sacred to Babylon's #1 god, Marduk. Okay, so we've talked about the incredible physical city. But Babylon's power wasn't just in its walls and gates. Its most enduring legacy was actually built on ideas, truly groundbreaking concepts in law and science that would go on to shape civilizations for thousands of years. Take a look at this. The Code of Hammurabi. Now, before this, justice could often be, well, whatever the guy in charge said it was that day. Hammurabi had 282 laws carved onto a public monument for everyone to see. It covered everything from property rights to family law, and it created a whole new standard for how society should work. At the very heart of this code was a principle called lex talionis, the law of retaliation. And you've definitely heard the phrase, an eye for an eye. That's where it comes from. Now, it sounds really harsh to us today, but its goal was actually to limit revenge and establish a clear, predictable connection between a crime and its punishment. All right, what about this? Just the number 60. What on earth could this possibly have to do with an ancient empire and your life right now? Just take a second. Where do you see the number 60 all the time? Well, it turns out the Babylonians were, get this, absolute geniuses when it came to math and astronomy. And they used a base 60 system. So yeah, every single time you check your watch, you are literally using a mathematical legacy left behind by Babylonian scribes thousands of years ago. Kind of wild, right? And you know, Babylon's influence didn't stop with our clocks. It went way deeper, leaving a profound mark on some of the world's most sacred stories. And this all happened during a really pivotal moment in history we call the Babylonian exile. So here's what happened. When Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, he deported its elite, we're talking its scribes, priests, and thinkers, all the way to Babylonia. And it was during this long period of exile, surrounded by Babylonian culture and literature, that many of the texts of the Hebrew Bible were actually written down, compiled, and edited into the form we know today. And this is where things get really fascinating for scholars. You see these fascinating parallels. For example, in Babylonian myths, humans are made from clay to be basically servants for the gods. The Genesis account also has humans created from the earth, but for a totally different purpose, to be caretakers of creation. The core idea is similar, but that shift in purpose, that's a huge ideological statement.
But if you think that's a cool parallel, wait till you hear about the flood stories. This is where it gets uncanny. The Babylonian version has a massive flood, a god warning a hero, the hero building a giant boat to save his family and animals, and he even sends out birds to find dry land. It's so similar that it's widely believed this powerful story entered the biblical tradition during the exile's time in Mesopotamia. So we've seen Babylon's incredible legacy in our laws, our timekeeping, our oldest stories. But what about the actual physical city itself, the source of it all? Well, its priceless artifacts are fragile, and they've faced some very modern threats. Let's just zoom in on one powerful symbol, the Lion of Babylon. Carved over 2,500 years ago, this 12-ton statue is a hugely important emblem of Iraq's ancient heritage. But for years, its survival was anything but certain. I mean, this poor statue was facing threats from all sides. You had unsupervised visitors literally climbing all over it, rising groundwater was eroding its base, and in a really misguided attempt to protect it, someone wrapped damaging razor wire all around it. It was a mess. But then, in 2013, a rescue mission began. A collaboration between the World Monuments Fund and Iraq's State Board of Antiquities started a painstaking conservation project. First, they carefully removed all that razor wire. Then they repaired the crumbling base, and in the process, they actually uncovered original Babylonian bricks. They stabilized the massive statue itself, and finally, they installed new, effective barriers to protect it for the future. And the result? It's just a fantastic success story. Thanks to this international effort, the Lion of Babylon now stands safe and sound, a testament not just to ancient power, but to our modern dedication to preserving our shared human history. Which brings us to a final thought. The physical city of Babylon fell over 2,500 years ago. But if its principles of justice are still echoing in our legal systems, if its mathematics are still ticking away on our wrists, and its myths are still resonating in our most foundational texts, did Babylon ever truly disappear? Or is it still with us, hiding in plain sight?